Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Mark Fox again. And why? Because we have results from the 90-day Lyme study that I did with gracious donation from Mark Fox of 10 Vibe personal PEMF devices. Now, what's PEMF? If you don't know, it is pulsed electromagnetic frequency, and it's what amplifies us. It's kind of like a charge for us. We are made of electrolytes and ions. So all these little molecules that have a charge. We, in fact, have more electricity within us than one bolt of lightning. That's pretty cool. So what are these things doing? They're helping to reboot us because energy vampires, stress vampires, people at work, things of that nature can deplete us. And if you're feeling tired, you don't feel your best, well, hey, guess what? We have a charge issue. And what goes along with charge? Circulation. The Chinese talked about this millions of years ago in terms of qi, which is our charge, and circulation, which is blood flow in that world. And here's the thing, everything really boils down to circulation and our energy that we have. And you might say, oh, energy work, that's woo-woo, but how can you deny that we have electrolytes in our bodies? A lot of us drink electrolytes to help reboot ourselves. That is a thing. And we fire our neurons using calcium, using potassium, using sodium. There's also voltage gated channels where our cells communicate with each other. So that's energy, folks. Nevertheless, Mark and I are going to talk about our results from the 90-day Lyme study. And turns out, we didn't cure Lyme, not that I expected to, but what I found is that a lot of folks are feeling better mentally and nervous system wise, having used the PEMF device. Now, me personally, I have seen some awesome stuff from getting my gut moving a little bit better to helping me sleep better and even just feeling more chill. My pets who have a little bit of separation anxiety, because why not? I'm such a cool mom. They do well with the Vibe device as well. And so Mark is the owner and CEO of Rezona Health, which manufactures the Vibe personal PEMF device. And man, this is cool because I've seen the benefits of PEMF, but it was these mats you have to lay on, right? So you have to dedicate time to do that. And they're tens of thousands of dollars. Whereas the Vibe's around $300, you put it in your pocket, you can take it on the go, you can multitask with it. There's no reason not to be able to use it. And it really does amplify anything that needs a little rebooting or recharging within your body. And the reason it seems to resonate most with me and probably works well for a lot of folks is that, let's face it, when an organ system or something in our tissue is ailing, it needs a charge. It needs circulation. How do we do that? Well, we can move, we can circulate, we could take all kinds of supplements to boost circulation, but really, we're charged electrical beings. Why wouldn't we use charge to do it? So nevertheless, I'm going to reintroduce you to Mark Fox. We're going to talk all about my Lyme study up at the Center for Human Restoration in Crandon, Wisconsin. My boss and the owner of the clinic up there, Laura Connor, helped me out with this super cool study. And I look forward to researching more with PEMF as we move forward. But nevertheless, let's talk about what happened in 90 days with my group. All right, let's reintroduce you to Mark Fox. Fox, welcome back to the Health Fix podcast.
Thanks for having me again. This would be fun.
Oh man, well, we've been communicating back and forth because of our little Lyme study we did. And definitely I was expecting a different outcome, but actually the outcome's pretty cool in the end here because every single person wanted to keep their device. And by the time we finished up the study at the end of May, one person had moved and we couldn't find them, but they didn't return their device. So I'm thinking they definitely still wanted to keep that around. And originally, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, we have a previous podcast, Mark and I talked about his PEMF device. It's a personal PEMF device called the Vibe. And we decided, let's do a Lyme study since I see a lot of folks here in central Wisconsin who have Lyme disease. And we wanted to see what would happen. And so Mark was like, hey, try this protocol with the brainwave, and then we deliver protocol with it, and another brainwave beta and another brainwave alpha. So it was delta, beta, and alpha. And both Mark and I thought, like, okay, we're going to see some brain stuff here, right? And we thought we were going to see some reduction in pain and all that. But we didn't quite see that. And in the first 30 days, what I got from a lot of folks, and I'm curious to hear from you, Mark, here as to what people say in their first 30 days of using the Vibe. Do people say, I notice something's different, but I can't put a finger on it? Do you hear that from folks?
A lot of times you'll hear something, it's those exact words. Sometimes it's something's not right, but they're saying it in a good sense, right? It's weird because their brain's like going, something's not right, but because they're so used to the pain. So it's just it's not their normal anymore. So that's why they feel a little strange about it sometimes. But yeah, we hear that a lot with not just with Lyme pain, back pain, neck pain, anything, right? Anything. You see that a lot.
And so it's fascinating because, of course, explaining to folks that when you feel not quite right because something has changed, your nervous system tends to be like, wait, this isn't safe. I can't decide if it's safe or not safe. And of course, I did some education with our folks around that and going, okay, seeing that you all want to hold on to the device and they all brought it in and were like, this thing's cool, but I can't, like I said, put a finger on it. I was like, okay, let's try something different. So Mark and I were like, all right, well, let's just try general inflammation with these folks and see what happens. So with general inflammation and what you've heard from your folks, what do folks usually say when they use the general inflammation? Do they feel like less swelling? Do they feel less puffy, less pain? What kind of things do you get out of folks?
All that, but mostly just I feel better. So, I mean, general inflammation, in fact, that's the protocol we go to as a default for a lot of things because 80% of all ailments in the world, the underlying cause is general inflammation. So that's what we recommend a lot. If if the specific one isn't working for you, then try general inflammation.
And, obviously with Lyme and for folks who are listening who maybe aren't as familiar with Lyme, we're talking swelling in joints that might be your wrist one day and it's your ankle the other day. So it is kind of hard to nail down, like, is it better or not? Because if the pain and presentation shifts, it can be a little tricky. And this is one of the things we ran into with trying to figure this out because someone will be like, well, my ankle feels better, but my wrist keeps swelling. So it gets a little tricky in the questioning. And for folks who want to geek out on like what we used a standard Lyme questionnaire that was about 37 questions. And I chose at the end to not use that and ask more subjective, just kind of like, hey, let's do some general questions. So Mark, I didn't even tell Mark what I asked here. So this is the first time he's hearing this. So Mark and I switched the protocol to general inflammation. And I added, so actually, I don't think I told him this, I added anxiety to it because every single one of the folks that I was talking to said, I don't feel as on edge. I don't feel as anxious. And so I said, let's see how this goes. So we put that in and then I gave him a little more time. I actually gave him 60 more days and I had 7 questions. And my first question, Mark, was, would you keep this device beyond the test study and use it for your general health or the health of your family? 9 of the folks, because we couldn't track down the last one in the end, said absolutely. And they actually admitted that they had given it to their family members. They were like, I don't know if I was supposed to do this, and so every single one of them had handed off to either a wife, a partner, kid. Some folks were putting it on their dogs. Some people put it next to their cats. So I have, a lot of outlier data there, but I consider this a positive thing. So how many folks do you talk to regularly where they take their device and they're like using it for something, they give it to a family member and then they get results or they put it on a pet?
Yeah. So my wife said when I first invented the device, she goes, the thing that sucks about your business model is it's not consumable. So you're only going to sell one of them. I go, well, they may loan it to their spouse or kids and she goes, man, I don't know about that. So our best seller is actually the 2-pack, right? So it's interesting because the Facebook haters will go, hey, why would you sell a 2-pack? Don't you believe in your instrument? What, is it going to break or one's not good enough? And I'm like, no, the 2-pack is for that reason. People are going to borrow it. And that happens all the time. I loaned it to somebody and they're not giving it back. So we actually have lots and lots of repeat customers for that reason.
I didn't ask my crew about that. Everyone had theirs in the end, but I had lent mine to my dad and he was like, hey, this thing's kind of cool. I need one. So that's what he's getting for his birthday. But I've definitely found in this case, there's a lot of that going on. So another question that I asked folks is, did the modes that you use, okay, I had the anxiety, I had the general inflammation modes. Did you trend to try other modes and which ones did you do? So I'm going to give you the list and I'm curious to hear kind of what you hear from other folks. So we've got 2 of the men tried to quit smoking. one. And one of the men said that they had cut down from a pack and a half a day to 7 cigarettes by the end of it. So
Wow.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And he's 82 years old and he said he's been smoking since he was 14. So I would say that's a big deal. One man tried the hangover mode. He said, I think I felt better. So
Yes, that one works.
2 men and 4 women tried the allergy mode. And of course, it was allergy season, of course, going through March and April and May when I kind of had folks in their different stages here. Have you heard much from folks talking about allergy mode? Anything in particular?
Yes, for sure. And that's one of the ones that most people will, it's not 30 days. They see a response sometimes when they run it once. And in fact, my friend he sent me a text, goes, "Oh my God, this thing is amazing for allergies and stuff and asthma." It's like both those things are. And I said, "You idiot. Are you just now using it? Because I gave it to you 3 months ago." He goes, "Well, yeah, I just used it last night." I'm like, "Yes, I told you it'd work." So we see that a lot. Also with allergies, because it's for people and pets. We see this a lot with horses and dogs, right? So one of the number one ailments in dogs is allergies. That's why they're scratching. So it helps a lot with dogs and horses and stuff with allergies, where they're sniffing grass all day, right? They got a face in the dirt, right? And grass. So, and the owners will go, "This is amazing what it did. My horse, it's always doing like that. They're breathing hard. They're bothered with allergies. A lot of times asthma too. So they see that in horses as well, that it's helping them a lot. Horses and dogs and people."
Nice. Yeah, this one, I didn't think about it during the allergy season, but folks, get stuffy, they get the watery eyes, whatnot. And so I found it interesting that, yeah, like more than half the group had tried the allergy mode, and pretty much everyone said, yeah, less stuffy, less watery eyes, just feeling less reactive. So,
Relative to that too is cold and flu. Yes, people will run that and they'll almost see something immediately. Case in point for me, when I get a cold, when I feel that itch in my throat, I know I'm going to have a headache for 2 days and I know it's going to last 2 weeks unless I run that device. So I have my own data there that it goes away in a day or two. I start running it as soon as I feel the itch in my throat, and it's way better. We get a lot of people with that, with cold. For long COVID, the flu protocol is killing it. Tons of people have no other solution for long COVID. The flu protocol is helping a lot of people with that. But you're not allowed to advertise anything about long COVID. You can't even
I
say that word.
know. I know. It's so frustrating. I'm not editing it out because I want people to hear this. And I have one gal in our group, in fact, and I'm glad you brought it up, who definitely started to have a lot of her symptoms of Lyme right around the time that she had the vax, and started to have trouble with walking, coordination, tingling in her hands and feet. And so she has Lyme, but it flared it and then ended up with what I would call long haul COVID. In fact, let me read her statement. She had said that she continues to wear the Vibe because it feels good. It's helped her in her tingling in her hand and feet and her gait. She's able to now go up and down the stairs without feeling like she's going to fall forward or slip down the stairs. And she was also slow to start walking, and now she's walking better and feels calmer with it, just in general, trusting herself more to walk. So, and I've seen her move and it's so much better. It's so
To tell her with the tingling in her hands to run fibromyalgia from the core protocols and neuropathy from the expansion protocols. I don't remember which of the 5 brainwave ones it is for neuropathy, but it's on the list. Have her run those 2 for the tingling in her hands or feet, any tingling, any nerve related issue, run those 2 protocols.
okay. We can easily do that. We can easily do that because she's like the out of all of the 10 folks in the group, she's the one that was like, and she had the most severe symptoms. The rest of the folks, Lyme, in different, and it's not that, I shouldn't say severe. I should probably say more like the more clear, like, oh my gosh, this is really, impeding how she functions. Everyone else can function, but they're not functioning well. I better
Right.
preface that for sure. But okay, we will let her know. And those of you guys who are listening for this, like, you heard it now, what else to do if you've got some tingling going on. And so as I go through the modes, the other really popular modes, I had 3 men and 7 women doing the relax and balance mode. So that tells us how many people are feeling that stress going on in general and
Right.
just feeling more calm. Do you feel like you get a lot of folks talking about that particular mode, or is it kind of not as a popular one that you hear?
It's the most popular. So I'll phrase it this way. So the most popular ailment in the world for people, pets, dogs, cats, horses, and humans across the planet in every culture is anxiety. It's the number one ailment, flat out. We're running an anxiety study right now. And what I'm telling people to do is run the anxiety protocol, run relax and balance, and then run brainwave alpha and theta for vagus nerve. So we're actually have a study going on right now, which I just started it actually. And I'm telling them to do all three of those. And it's just like you do now, get feedback of which of those three, all three of them, is one better than the other. What we're finding is with some people, and the reason I did that was some people on the anxiety protocol, a small percentage, their anxiety gets a little worse. And what I think it is because it has a lot of 40 hertz in there at gamma level. Gamma's the highest brainwave for listeners and stuff. So it could amp you up a little bit. Relax and balance has less of that, and the vagus nerve one is nowhere near that. The vagus nerve is alpha and theta, so it's going to be in like 8 to 10 hertz. So we're telling people we'll know a whole lot more in 30 days on that, but that's a complicated question to answer to your question, but try all three for anxiety. And again, you can see your dog, right? Separation anxiety, fireworks. Horses are, one of my horse owner friends told me years ago, a horse thinks everything's going to eat them constantly. Think they're going to die, right? So horses are constantly stressed out. Here's one of the most common things with horses. When they got to take, a horse owner has to put a horse in the trailer. The horse is going to freak out because they don't like the trailer. The horse owner, so my avatar is a cowgirl at 52 years old. That is the horse owner, okay? They freak out a week ahead of time because they know they got to deal with the horse in a week to load them on the trailer. So we're saying, horse owner, run it on you, then run it right before the trailer shows up for the horse. So you calm him down, and they see a big difference. Horses' pace. I almost, if I didn't have a good conscience, I would make a protocol to just make horses lick, because every horse owner tells me if they're licking, they're happy.
Huh. I didn't know that.
And their ears, to make sure their ears are in the right configuration. So it's licking and ears. So I need to come up with a horse ear licking protocol, because every horse owner is like, sold. As soon as they do that, they see that and they go, they feel better.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. Noted. Noted. I know my guy, he's of course hanging out by me right now. I've got the device on me currently. So proof, guys, that I have it and it's running right here. So he likes to hang out with me. I've noticed like anytime I put it on, and I think you mentioned that in our original podcast, the pets will follow you around.
Pets will follow you. They'll go lay on it. So we have for dogs, it's for pain in the butt, because in general, because cats own the world and they don't care. You can't put anything on a cat, right? I've learned you also can't put it on a rhinoceros, because the rhino will smash anything you put on it. You can put it on giraffe, okay? But rhinos, no. But anyway, so we have dog bandanas that are specially made that the Vibe fits in. And we have dog harnesses that have a special pocket for the Vibe that should be here next week.
Nice. Nice. So working on like anxiety when they're on a walk and not becoming hyperactive or aggressive.
Same three things as human or a horse or our dog is anxiety, relax and balance, and vagus nerve.
Oh, this is so good. I'm so excited that you allowed me to do this, because it's been so fun. And just playing with it myself and my other coworkers as well. So going through the modes, of course, women, and we're going to talk about your peptide cream here because we need to talk about that for anti-aging. 5 of the women tried the weight loss mode, and 4 of the women tried the insulin resistance mode. And so I'm thinking we've got a lot of ladies trying to see if they can drop a little weight, seeing how they can use this as well. And both sections of those folks, I said, well, what happened? Did you lose any weight? They're like, well, not really, but I didn't feel like I was as hungry. There wasn't like as many cravings. And one gal in particular said, maybe I did lose a pound or two, probably because I wasn't eating all the things that I would be kind of craving. So
the weight loss, here's the secret, the top secret, the weight loss and the insulin resistance are the same protocol. So the weight loss will not work unless your weight gain is due to insulin resistance. Now, type 2, again, the SUVs are definitely going to show up now. Type 2 diabetes, and I said it instead of blood sugar, is for sure. That is, we have another study going on with that. I have so much anecdotal data, but we have a third-party independent lab running that study to go prove the numbers and statistical significance and all that with blood sugar. And I know it will, because I've already seen it for the last several years, right? And what's cool about that one is everybody that's a type 2 diabetic already has a continuous glucose monitor, or they're pricking their fingers, which may have to edit this part too, because the Libre people will probably burn my house down. But the Bluetooth connection is raising your blood sugar. A study was completed on that shows, I am not doctors, I can't give you advice, but I would just say, I'd rather you prick your finger than use something that has the Bluetooth connection and stuff. That's a cool one, because I can't argue it, right? They're like, in fact, it's weird. And they'll go, my blood sugar was 220 and now it's 120. And that happened in like 30 minutes. How is that possible? They get angry a little bit because they have never seen anything like that. It's actually how I get most of my wholesalers, because we sell them in 10 packs and 100 packs for wholesalers. They'll go to the doctor go, oh my God, your A1C is 5.5. It's never been below 8. You finally changed your diet. You finally did what I told you. And they go, I didn't do crap. I did this. And they go, what is that? And they grab it and the doctor calls me. So we used to get about one wholesaler a month. We get about 3 a day now or
Oh,
so,
wow.
which is really cool. I need to double check this number, but because I wrote an article on it, but I haven't read it in a while. I think it's 417 hertz. So it's going to be resolve, I think, on here for addiction. So any addiction, what we're getting a lot of feedback with on that is snacking, right? I thought it would be like alcohol, and it does help for that, and drugs, but just snacking and potato chips, and people aren't hungry anymore. And it's a weird thing. This is a common response. I didn't even realize till 2 weeks later that I'm not snacking anymore. I didn't buy any potato chips was at 7-Eleven, and I always buy potato chips at 7-Eleven. Or Coca-Cola, right? I'm addicted to the Coke, right? It's not in there anymore, but sugar and that type of stuff. So we'll check at the end. I think it's resolve, right? It's 417.
Let me look. I can pop off this.
No,
Resolve.
hold on a second. Yeah, 417 hertz, resolve. So on
Got
the
it.
core protocols, run that one for any kind of addiction.
It's interesting you bring that up. And I think this could be a huge thing to put out there. Like, we've got a lot of folks on the GLP-1s, and those peptides will help to curb appetite. But when someone comes off of them, many women are terrified for the food noise to come back
Oh,
in. Having Resolve there to help with the food addiction, I think could be an incredible way to help rewire the system in terms of that desire for going after, the chips or whatnot, and especially in perimenopause, because I know even when my hormones dip, I will drive out of my way to find myself some chocolate. Like, it's embarrassing, I'm like, I'm not, I was never that kind of person, but now I'm like, I need chocolate, must find the good stuff.
it's like Louis C.K., the comedian, there's a string on that. He's like, yeah, I'm at the airport and I walked to the other terminal to get a Cinnabon. And no, I wasn't going anywhere. I'd already arrived home.
Yep. Oh man, I'm telling you, at the airport in Seattle, they got Seattle chocolates. I will sometimes be like, will they notice if I take 2 samples? Anyway, I went out of my way for chocolate. I admit it. And so I need to use the Resolve as well. None of my folks talked about the Resolve mode, but then I did find something out. I asked them, would you try more modes if I had given you a little bit more education on all the other modes? Because of course, in my time frame, I didn't have the time to do it. They had access to your website, but hey, people are busy. And what they had said was yes. They wanted to know what, and I would say, I didn't quantify this, but I would say that probably most of the folks who were using the Vibe were like, I want to know what every single one of those modes can do for me, because I'm like, I think this thing's amazing, is how it was posed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyone that wants to collect this is kind of a weird thing. We took them protocols off the website itself because the FDA doesn't want us to exist and they didn't want them on the website. So you contact us, we'll send them to you in a PDF form. So you can see that there's 59 protocols on the core protocol list, and then the expansion protocols, which use the 5 brainwave protocols, can be repurposed for 70 other things. So basically almost 130 protocols on there.
Got it. And of course, I can take the pressure off you, Mark. I have those PDFs too, so folks, you can reach out to me too. Then that way he doesn't have the black SUV showing up at his door. They can come after me for a minute. I can
My
divert.
nerdy friend that sits there and slings code in a dark room, right? I said, so how do I put these protocols on the blockchain so when the government kills me, my customers can still get it? He goes, you're going to love this acronym, IPFS. I go, what is that? He goes, Interplanetary Filing System. I go, is that for real? Yep, it's a real thing. So PEMF world, PEMFworld.eth.limo. That's how you put it in the blockchain. So all of it's in the blockchain. If anyone wants to go get them there, I'll give you that link. People can go to that too.
Love it. You guys are so smart. On that. So then I asked folks what mode of anxiety, like you said, anxiety or general inflammation, which one did they like best? And if they didn't like those two and they had played with another one, which one did they like? So 5 folks said general inflammation, 2 said rest. I put rest and relax. That is not the right mode.
Relax and balance.
Yep, relax and balance. And then 2 said anxiety. So interestingly enough, even going back to the protocol and they had played with others, they still like that general inflammation. So there is something to the general inflammation for the Lyme. And so I'm kind of going, all right, I think we're on to something here. And I think what I learned from this, and you probably can back me up on this, is I think everybody's unique. And we may start off with a base protocol. And I don't think the first protocol we did was bad because it's vagus nerve, it's balancing. I think it's a foundation. And then where people are at now, we tweak it to what else they need. Because as I tell folks, and you probably believe in this too, since you're working with PEMF, we got to change the physics before we change the chemistry. And I think for a lot of people, we're going after what is out of imbalance, like on the physics level first on them.
One thing next time you do it that I would
Mhm.
encourage you ask them,
Mhm.
because this is the phenomena that's the big deal. People forget how bad they felt 30 days ago.
Mhm.
It just, right? And it's true with this. It's true with any medication. I mean, I have a chiropractor friend I've known since kindergarten, right? And he's like, Mark, that's why I videotape every new patient. They come in on a walker. The next time they come in, they're on a cane. Then they come in with a lap dog. And it's like, well, I could always do this. No, you couldn't. So he shows them the video. You couldn't do that 30 days ago or 2 months ago. So one of the best litmus tests that we found, which by the way, we're going to start selling our own smart rings and smart watches so that people can actually measure the biomarkers to all those things you just said. But one of the best litmus tests of all this, ask your spouse, your kids, and your friends if you're being less of an asshole. That's it.
I remember this. I
Yeah.
remember this from our original podcast. Yes, yes. If you're being
Are you being nicer? Do your friends invited you to a picnic that they haven't ever done in 3 years, right? To come over, and suddenly your kids want to hang out with you. And guess what? Your wife doesn't want to get divorced anymore. These are all real case studies that
yeah.
not case studies, but feedback we got from customers is, and the school teacher will be the one to call the parents and go, you changed Johnny's ADHD drugs, didn't you? No. Why? He's paying more attention, blah, blah, right? So the teachers see it, spouses see it, your friends see it. Ask people like that. Don't lead them to the question. Just say, hey, do you think I'm acting better? Or am I cooler to hang out with these days? Or, come up with your own phrase for it. But that's what we're finding is a huge test that because you forgot how you felt 30 days ago, this is my theory. I'm going to get in trouble for it. But I'm going to start spreading the word. If you didn't forget how bad you felt, women would never have 2 kids, right? They're forgetting what happened on that first birth and how painful and awful it was. They somehow, their brain, that's probably the only it's something in evolution that's making you erase that from your guys' brain. So you have more, because it's too, if you only had 1 kid, we wouldn't be here, right? It's the Elon Musk theory that in 20 years, the population has to be less because each couple's making 1.8 kids instead of more than 2. So the population has to go down statistically. Anyway, yeah. All those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't ask the partner or the family question for sure, but I definitely asked everyone at the end, like, what do you feel has changed the most? And then I showed them their before and then 30-day answers and then went to it. And really in particular, my 82-year-old that was in this study, he was like, well, I feel definitely more chill. The smoking changed, right? I'm not smoking as much. And then he was like, I don't know about my feet and walking, but I said, you're not using your cane anymore. He's like, oh yeah. Just like you had said with the chiro. He also got himself into the podiatrist and got himself some orthotics that actually worked for him. So he was more motivated to take care of himself. So I'm seeing him be more motivated to take care of himself. He doesn't have, his wife passed and his family, well, they're kind of not so in his picture. So really it's us that see him on a regular basis.
Right.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And he goes golfing now. He wasn't doing that. And he's got it around his neck all the time.
Yeah.
He's like poster
Speaking
child.
around the neck, I don't know if we talked about it or not. And I don't even know if I gave you one of these yet. If I didn't, shame on me. Is the new Vega Vibe pendant.
No, this is cool.
So it is a vagus nerve toner. Okay,
Ooh.
this is near idiot proof, right? You turn it on, you select the one you want, you hit play. This is double idiot proof. There's nothing to do but turn the button on.
Nice.
And it's a white light, and you just go like that, wear it as a pendant. Now, what it's doing is the vagus nerve. So this is where I think I'm made a clever solution here. One is the reason I invented it is because the FDA doesn't own vagus nerve. Okay,
True.
It's not an ailment, but the vagus nerve is in your brain, comes down both sides of your neck. It clusters around your heart, goes to every organ, every part of your body, pretty much. And it's the super highway between your brain and your organs that talk to each other both ways. Okay. Because there's a cluster near your heart, and I actually saw this in a TED talk. As soon as I saw that, I ran in here, made a note, build a pendant, because this looks like jewelry. Granted, it's bigger than I wanted, but this is where the technology's at today. We had to jump through all kinds of waveform transmission hoops, technical stuff that I don't even understand to get it as small as it is, right? But this is our new hot product that's really selling well, and it's super, super simple. So it's a vagus nerve toner. It's very similar to the Vibe Alpha Theta, but a slightly different twist to it. Here was the hard decision. We ran 3 different protocols for it in a third-party independent lab with a doctor, and they all were good. But they were all good. That's 8 different things we were measuring: heart rate variability, pulse, anxiety, general well-being, all the things that we measured. So we had to make a hard decision, which was a good one, which one to pick. We picked heart rate variability, the one that increased it the most, up to 55%. And I said to the doctor, I go, yeah, I wish it was more than 55%. And he goes, you're an idiot. Athletes will pay millions of dollars for it to go up 5%. I'm like, oh, okay. I've never seen anything to make it change 55%. I'm like, okay, so this is cool. This is our new product that's out called Vega Vibe. It's another company website, but vegavibe.com. So yeah, this is fun.
Let's talk about peptide creams.
So this is our normal creams, right? You take the Vibe, you go like this. It's just any protocol you can put into this, but we're going to come out with 2 new creams. One is for wrinkles. So it's going to be a peptide based. It's going to have 2 different peptides in it, and water-based cream. And the other one's going to be for pain. So I have a hard time with this word. Analgesic, right? A pain.
Analgesic?
Analgesic. I knew I was going to say it wrong. So analgesic, yes. So creams with that for pain. So it can be, I just dreamed this up today. I got to look at my note. For the arthritis, carpal tunnel, general inflammation, back pain, neck pain, tendonitis, and muscle strains, core protocols is run the Vibe with that pain cream because this is what I think is cool. I just dreamed all this up. Me and my team in the last week it'll be the only PEMF infused peptide enhanced wrinkle cream. Nobody has a cream that has peptide and frequency in it. So what we're going to recommend people do, energize your cream with the Vibe like that. Once it'll hold this for the cream, anecdotally will hold frequency for 30 days, but we're going to tell people recharge it every week just for,
why not?
Right? Charge it every week, doesn't hurt it. Use the cream and wear the device, right? So for like arthritis, put the cream on your hands after it's energized, and like I said, energize it once a week, put it on your cream, and wear the arthritis. Hopefully you're going to get this cool dual action thing that nobody else has. And we'll see. We're going to run studies and all that.
I'm super intrigued. I'm thinking, wow, well, all these Lyme people could use the pain cream for sure. And then I personally would like to know about the anti-aging. My biggest experience from mine using it for me is the anxiety. I was having a lot, just as being an entrepreneur, it is something that, you really do kind of, what's next? What's next? Am I doing the right things? Haters, whatever, all of it. So for me, it's helped me sleep better. It's also helped me reduce my anxiety. I definitely will say this, interestingly enough too, I haven't had as much back pain as I had before. And I have some flares here and there. I have a nasty herniation in my L5S1. And yeah, I feel like on the overall, since I've used the device, I don't have the issues during the middle of the day of things that would normally bug me.
I'll tell you, Gene, this is the funnest job I've ever had in my life. I keep telling all the team in fact, we hired a new person a couple days ago. It's not a movie. This is real life. You're going to be talking to people who have literally been tortured, or ex-drug addicts, or women or their husband, whatever, beat them up, right? You're going to need abuse. Because most people that come to this have long-term mental or physical pain, or both, to find this technology. You're going to be helping people. It's going to be like the coolest feeling ever, but get ready, because this is not a movie. This is not fiction. This is real people that have life and things have happened to them. Yeah. Because PTSD and trauma, like, this, I think on our last one, 98% success rate. It's the first thing that we really started marketing it to. We have the largest clinical trial for PMF and PTSD in the world. I think I'm going to keep saying that until somebody challenges me, because I don't know anyone that's done as much as we have with that, which is huge, right? So it's super, super rewarding. We have these at the Pentagon. I had a 2-star general go, if this really works for PTSD, every soldier should have one as standard issue. Like, please, how do I make that happen? So we have them at the Pentagon trying to make that happen. Wow, if that happens and we get one to every soldier or first responder, right? Here's another secret.
Yeah.
I have a discount for military veterans initially, and then somebody at a police retreat said, hey, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then they all came and said, can we get the same military discount? We're first responders. I don't want to tell policemen and firemen and cops no. So we've extended that to all first responders as well.
It's definitely field because in my Tacoma practice, I mean, that's basically a lot of the folks I see. It's a field that they need the nervous system regulation support for everything they see and getting treated like crap a lot of the time
Right.
for trying to help. I mean, that's a mind bender in and of itself. And I don't know how people deal with that. But the truth is like, yeah, you're totally right. Like anybody that's in any type of fight or flight situation, whether it's a job, whether it's, just life, this is one of the best things I've seen, hands down. And I would say probably 60%, so 6 of my 10 people in my group have trauma in the background of some
Yep.
sort.
Yep.
That's why chronic illness stays around.
And most people know this statistic. It's something like on surveys, right? 60% of the world would rather die than stand on stage and give a speech. So this thing works great for public speaking, or you got a meeting that, you're scared. The seniors, your boss's boss is going to be there, and that only happens once a year, and you're presenting, all that stuff. The relax and balance and anxiety and vagus nerve all help with that a lot.
Love it. We will keep promoting that. We will keep doing that. I love the new pendant. That is super cool. Anything for vagus nerve to help folks, because so many people be like, you just need to help your body feel safe. And that's easier said than done, having something to help give the vibration of. All right, Mark. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for helping out these fine folks up in central Wisconsin here, because they all love it. Every single one of them is showing their friends. I know the kids are using it in their families. And so we definitely have impacted more than just 10 people. And even the person who moved and we can't find, I am pretty sure that we're still helping folks there. And gosh, can't wait to see that peptide cream and how things play out with your next steps. And I'm thinking once we get this garden study going, we pop out again and go, okay, this is the next thing.
Cool. Thanks again for having me. It was awesome.
Hey, my pleasure. Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.